Welcome to the Edge of Innovation with InSource, the podcast that takes you on a thrilling ride through the world of digital transformation. Join us as we dive into the latest trends, cutting edge technologies, and game changing strategies that are revolutionizing manufacturing and industrial settings. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just curious about the future of industrial innovation, we've got something for everyone. In this episode, InSource's Jeff Miller, Director of Smart Manufacturing and Innovation, and Scott Miller, no relation, Vice President of Professional and Managed Services, discuss the ways you can set yourself up for success and sustainability with your MES projects. Take it away, Jeff.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Over the past 2 years, AI and cloud have dominated the spending aspirations in manufacturing leadership. But according to Deloitte's 2025 Smart Manufacturing Survey that just came out, manufacturers have shifted their spending focus to what I would consider more foundational technologies and manufacturing operating systems. So let me read a few of these off where investors or these manufacturers are going to be investing. Read off a few of these. The top one is 41% are going to invest in factory automation. And then 40% are going to invest in data analytics. And then 38% are going to invest in advanced production scheduling. And then 35% quality management. And then 34% manufacturing execution systems. And then 34% active sensors. So for me, this message is clear. While AI might grab the headlines, MES is still the backbone of digital transformation. But here's the catch. It only works if you implement it with the right mindset. There's a quote by Jeff Winters in his summary of Deloitte's survey. He posted this on LinkedIn, and it really resonated with me. We like the sound of digital transformation as long as it doesn't slow us down. We like the optics of AI as long as we don't have to redesign how we work. We like talking about the workforce of the future as long as we don't have to train the one we already have. To me, that perfectly sums up the tension we see in MES projects and getting true funding for digital transformation initiatives. So today, we are going to discuss this and how companies should consider executing MES projects and digital transformation. I'm Jeff Miller. I'm joined by Scott Miller, no relation. Him and his team have been executing MES projects and driving organizational change for many, many years. Scott, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Appreciate it.
So Scott, what is your initial reaction to the quote I read from Jeff?
Actually, a little bit surprised because for so many years, the concept of factory automation being at the top has not been there. There's never really been this recognition of the fact that whether it's MES or AI or whatever technology you want to throw out there, the dependency is on data. You have to have that data to begin with. And so many manufacturers have not invested in that basic, let's get the data that's appropriate and necessary to be able to do this. There's an expectation we just throw this on top of it and go make it happen. And then once they've made that investment, they realize they don't have everything that they need. So I'm kind of surprised that's at the top of the list, but it's heartening as well that that's actually occurring.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think a lot of people or a lot of organizations tried to invest in AI because they saw it as, hey, this great enabler, and it is a great enabler. But they found out quickly they didn't have the right data systems, the right metrics, and the right data sources to pull this information from. So I see this as them investing back in modernization of the plant floor. Investing in getting that data from the plant floor. That you see that from advanced production scheduling, quality management, and the execution systems. Those are basically manufacturing operating systems, and that's the crux of where you're going to get most of your valuable data.
What's interesting beyond just the automation component, the technology piece, is that people are beginning to recognize also having the data is one thing, but the data has to have the right attribution too. I've got a client we're working with right now who's deploying an MES, and one of the folks that was responsible for essentially building the reason groups for attributing downtime. We're working with them to build that out, trying to understand what it looked like. They were being challenged for why do I have to go to this level of detail? Why do I need to break it out in this fashion? Went to a conference that was focusing on AI, and they came back completely excited about what AI was going to bring. But they also recognized that without the details, without understanding how to attribute the data properly, they wouldn't have anything to work with. So it really fostered a recognition of it's not just the data, it's putting the right attribution to the data so that you can make it useful and actionable.
Yeah, and that brings me to a point that, even though manufacturers are planning to invest in like an execution system, it doesn't mean that they're going to be successful doing it. We see a lot of times, a lot of the studies out there, 70%, and I just saw another study that said 75% of digital transformations fail. And largely it's due to adoption of the technology.
Did the digital transformation fail?
What's that?
Did the digital transformation may have failed. The question is, did the project fail?
That's right. And largely it didn't say digital transformation failures due to the technology. It said due to adoption of the technology.
Exactly.
And that talks to cultural change and the change necessary. And that talks to me about what, the line that Jeff wrote, which was, as long as we don't have to redesign how we work.
Exactly.
And as long as digital transformation doesn't slow us down.
Which is funny. What does transformation mean?
That's right. Change.
I want to transform from one thing to another, but I don't want to change how I work.
That's right. That's the tension I feel, and I think what gets missed is the fact that when we implement these projects, a lot of times we treat them like technology pilots. And there is lots of evidence and proof in the marketplace that the technology is not the problem. The technology is not the thing you should be evaluating. Surely you should do your due diligence on the front side of your technology selection and your partner for that. But outside of that, these pilots that they start with, a lot of times start with a technology focus and miss this concept of redesigning how we work and change management, the culture of the organization, and training, and training your staff. Talk to us a little bit about how we approach that when we engage into these MES projects, Scott.
How much time do you have?
We have about 20 minutes.
It's a big topic. I say that sort of tongue in cheek, but change management is huge. In manufacturing in particular, it is a challenge because from a manufacturing perspective, the folks who get hired in manufacturing are really good at doing the same thing consistently and producing the results that you expect them to produce. When you introduce change, the last thing they want to do is change. So the hurdle, the barrier is even higher when you're working with a manufacturing organization for good reason. So that concept of you're going to show me I'm going to do my work differently going forward doesn't just apply, by the way, to the operator or the supervisor on the plant floor. It applies to the production manager, the plant manager, the senior managers, who suddenly have a different set of data, have to look at things through a different lens, if you will, and change the way they work as well. So the reason I asked the question about how much time is, this isn't just about training the operators to do it a different way. This is about transforming the organization and the way the organization goes to work, which is a lot of what AI talks about. It opens the door to different possibilities. Well, different possibilities are things that don't exist yet, which means you have to be willing to embrace and change the way you're going to work as you're going forward.
Yeah, you make that makes a lot of sense. And one of the we get RFIs and RFPs a lot, and I would say unequivocally, 98% of those do not include change management, helping them to adopt the technology. In fact, if you're familiar with, back in the day when we were buying toys for our kids, there was this, on these toys, there was a lot of times this thing said, batteries not included, right? And if you never put batteries in the toy, it would never work. And I see change management and these projects and that they come in, where they are trying to put in an MES system. If change management is not included, it's not going to work.
It's kind of like did the same thing a few more years ago for me than you, but you go get the toys, you're ready for Christmas, you're ready for them to open them on Christmas morning, and if you didn't think to buy the batteries for Christmas morning to put in those toys, that Christmas morning wasn't all that great. It's the
That's
same
right.
thing with regard to change management and understanding what's going to change from an operations perspective for the organization. I would say, Jeff, I will acknowledge, it's probably not 98%, it's probably 95%. We are seeing organizations that have experienced the pain of trying to do a lean transformation or trying to do a quality or MES transformation, and people that have experienced the challenge that are now saying, hey, what about this? Hey, what's going on? So it is improving in the marketplace.
And largely a lot of those that do come in are, I would say, extremely budget minded.
Very much so. Completely agree.
That are on the side of recognizing the concept of change, and they try to layer in the solution on top of the process they have versus redesigning the processes that to enable the technology to get the outcomes
Exactly.
that they're trying to achieve. And this it's not about implementing technology. It's about driving those outcomes, right?
Precisely.
And so a lot of times change management gets conflated with training, as you mentioned before, and maybe some SIs might provide some training when they do their implementations, but a real change management and adoption is not training. Talk to me a little bit about the difference. Give me a few.
Yeah, training is it's what everybody bundles up and says, hey, we got to go train our people to get this thing done. But there's a presumption when people say that. The presumption is if I give them a new tool and I train them, they're going to go use it. And that presumption is backwards. Go back to what I said a few minutes ago about change being anathema to the manufacturing organization. You have to walk them through that process. But the change from a people perspective is only one dimension of it. The change from the process perspective is really where it's got to start. And it goes back to that term transformation. 70-some%, there was an article I read not too long ago that said 70-some% of organizations still depend on Excel as their MES. They're still collecting data with Excel today. That's how they're running their plants today. Excel is a fantastic tool for that. The reason it's so well adopted is because I can make it my own. I can make it do what I want it to do. You don't have to tell me how to do it, or we can make it our own within the plant, if you will. So if I'm a multi-site organization, I'll have one MES here, another MES here, another MES here, and they run really well. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just not as efficient as they could be if they had common systems or a system that supported them more effectively. That concept of looking at that process and not just replicating that process in software beyond Excel is the key component. But even more important to that, everybody knows and understands the pieces of paper and Excel spreadsheets that are on the floor today. They are prolific. How do you take that and translate what a person is using? And I'll give a really good example. I'm a supervisor walking the line, and I've got a piece of paper that's all the stuff that I'm going to go and do today. And it has check sheet points. I need to do it at 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock. And I got a list of things that I need to do, or attributes. I did it, didn't do it. I did it, I didn't do it. And oh, by the way, there's some data I need to record down here to make sure that it shows that I was checking things and did stuff. That combines time, that combines content and scope. And oh, by the way, the production manager has to sign off on it. So there's another signature down there at the bottom. That piece of paper that people have been familiar with walking around the floor very comfortably with their checklist throughout the years, now is going to become an interface on a tablet maybe, or on a monitor, if you will. And by the way, when you translate it to an electronic format, it doesn't look the same. That person who's familiar with the paper, we have to walk them through and understand how do we, number one, take it apart and put it back together in a format that works for them. Once it's there, once we've got it, then you can think about how to train them. But even more importantly, before they're going to pay attention to the training, you got to explain to them what's going to be different and why. What's in it for me? What's the value in me doing this? I've been doing this for 22 years, and it works really well. Why would I move to this next step? So that concept of making sure you do the process right before you can think about training folks is really the challenge. And I'll add one more piece beyond that. It's actually less about training. People learn things very quickly. You don't do classroom training with this kind of stuff. You need maybe a short period of time on the front end to teach them how to log in, to make sure you've got navigation and basic capability. The real training is out on the plant floor. It's actually in their working environment where they get to do something with it and recognize what's going on. And the training even in itself is relatively short. People can get trained, but particularly in production operations, they're doing a lot of different stuff all day long. They'll use that application for very short spurts, very short periods of time. The supervisors don't have time to come and check on them on a regular basis. You need someone who's going to coach them, who's going to work with them to make sure they're actually doing it right, and who they're willing to acknowledge, hey, I didn't quite get this when I got trained, which they probably won't say to their supervisor or to the production manager, but they'll say to someone who's working with them to coach them through the process. So that training sliver is relatively narrow. There's the coaching on the back end and a lot of work on the front end to make sure you get the processes set up properly and those user interfaces working effectively for them.
And another thing that I've working with you and your team for many years now, one of the things I've seen that is very powerful is challenging the organization, right? Your team coming in and challenging the status quo, challenging why they're doing those things. And I think that, having an external voice, manufacturers, they know how to make product. They know how to run their operations. But a lot of times, they get stuck in how they have done it in the past. Mm-hmm. And they need somebody to come in from the outside and maybe look at it from a different lens. Right. And talk to me a little bit about some of those, cases where we've, challenged somebody, within the organization.
Yeah. You mentioned a minute ago that there's about when the RFI comes in and they're interested in doing the change management, number expectations are relatively low. The budget isn't quite there to be able to accomplish it. The reality is to be able to do this kind of work, to be able to sort of move people through that process and challenge them, you can only really challenge someone effectively if you have credibility. To have credibility, you have to have some trust. Well, one of the reasons we've been successful is the folks that are engaged with our clients, they're former plant managers, former supervisors, people that know manufacturing, that may not know how to make cheese, they may not know how to make a donut or do aggregate specifically. That's really what the client needs to know and understand. But knowing how to engage with someone and challenge them on how and why they're doing something is really the critical component. So a lot of our success, quite frankly, is because we got good people who can quickly build credibility, quickly build trust, and be that third-party observer. This is you can see this in all kinds of studies. There's something about a third party who's working with you when you're doing a project that's different than having an internal resource do it. It's not that they can't, and I'm not here to say that this can't be done internally by any organization, and we're happy to train organizations to do it themselves. But there's still something about having that third-party objective individual who people are willing to open up to, people are willing to work with in a different way than they are with the folks that are inside the organization. And that ability to coach and challenge folks, not just on doing the work, but so what are you doing with this? So what does this mean to you? So how would you loop this action up the ladder to make sure something gets done going forward? And again, I'm going to harp on it, but it's not just the operator. It's the supervisor. It's when they're doing their shift handovers. Are you asking the right questions to your people? Are you engaging them? You've got data here that gives you a very, very rich set of questions to ask your people to motivate them to do something differently in the future. Are you actually doing that? Are you taking advantage of what this is offering to you now? So it's a very rich opportunity if you're willing to take the time and dive into it.
Yeah, and another thing that we are not bound by when you have an external party come in, we're not bound by internal politics and we're not bound by bandwidth, right? And those a lot of times when companies say, yeah, we're going to handle that ourselves, there are some hurdles that they have to overcome in those two areas. People aren't doing nothing during the day, right?
Oh, they're busy.
Yeah.
They're busy. Exactly.
They have a day job, and to layer and to do change management, it is a nearly full-time job for several weeks.
The reason the supervisor can't effectively train is because they already have a 40, 45, 50-hour a week job. And so when you go live, the last thing the supervisor is going to have time to do, because by the way, they're learning the systems themselves, is go and do the training or the coaching or the reinforcement. So you're exactly right. People are busy. People are doing the work. It's at this point in time when you've got extra work going through, how do you bring that resource in that can support you in that you only want there for a short period of time?
That's right. The other thing I always like to liken it to, a lot of times, manufacturers are professionals. They are professional manufacturers. They do this every day. But I like to give this analogy that if you wanted to go and learn to play golf. You go out and take golf lessons for a whole week, which is what we analogous to what we might do for training, right?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You wanted to go to take lessons for a week. The next week, are you going on the PGA Tour?
I don't think you've earned your tour card yet. No.
No, I don't think so. And that's what we expect. Manufacturers are professionals, for sure. But when you get a new system in and you just focus on training them, there's a whole lot more to make effective use of that training after the training.
And the question is, what are you training them to? Are you training them to an application, or are you training them to a different way of working?
Right.
It's the things they're doing around the use of the application that makes it stick, that makes it sustainable. Which I'll go back to the challenge I gave you a few minutes ago when you were saying 70% of the digital transformations fail. The reality is the technical side of the project generally doesn't fail. We've all gotten really good at gathering the requirements and building an application that meets the requirements and checking the box and going through all the testing. We've gotten really good at doing that. So if you look at the actual data, it isn't because the project failed. It's because the program failed. Organizationally, we haven't met the business requirements to support overall transformation and success. So that distinction is well worth looking at.
So let's put a bow on this. How can InSource Solutions Group help a company that's looking at digital transformation, that's looking at maybe putting in an MES system? How can we help as a partner for them?
That's a great question. So we've done, I'll call it soup to nuts. Organizations that are trying to figure out their roadmap, they're trying to figure out where they're going. They've got a lot of pieces in place. They're a relatively mature organization, but they just haven't figured out what's the most important pieces to put in place. That concept, we call it a digital transformation roadmap. That's sort of an entryway to say, how do we do that assessment of our mature organization, both from a technology, a process, and a people perspective, using really solid qualified tools that have been around for a long time and measuring those and sort of saying, where are you from a benchmark perspective? And then laying out a roadmap. Here's the things we think you should do over the next 5 years. How do we dialogue on prioritizing those and help you figure out how to move forward? Not really selling a project, really just saying, here are the things that you've identified are most critically important to you. Now you have a pathway to get there. That's sort of the big out-of-the-box kind of thing that can be done. Most organizations, though, have an idea of some of the things they want to work on. They know they've got an issue with quality. They know they have an opportunity with execution systems or traceability. Those areas are really important. The piece that I think we help with the most is, it goes back to you saying we can challenge them, is let's get into a discovery conversation where we're not just trying to gather the requirements of what you've defined. Let's challenge what you're thinking about from a business perspective, what difference it's going to make. Look at the outcomes that you're seeking, and then assess from a technology perspective what fits in parallel with how's this going to make a change, how will this change your organization? What are the implications of changing the organization to be able to get there as well? So whether it's a big, we don't know where we're going, or there's something explicit we think we need to go do, I think from our perspective, our desire is to make sure we're identifying what's going to bring you the most valuable outcome, not just address selling you an MES or a quality system, if you will.
That's right. Yeah, and I think a key important part of all that is that digital transformation road mapping is agnostic.
Yeah.
We are not selling product and that transformation. We're selling the technologies and the change management that needs to happen at each turn in order to enable the outcomes that we're targeting in that digital transformation roadmap. A lot of times there's companies, that do these things for organizations, the big companies that you could think of, right? They come in and they give you this vision and says, okay, you should be doing these things, but they don't give you the step-by-step, which technology, when, and what do I need to do in order to get the outcomes out of that. And I think that's a key differentiator in how we approach our digital transformation road mapping.
It absolutely is, and yet let's put a fine point on it. I mean, when we go and have those conversations, we clearly have certain technologies that we work with and know
That's right.
know well. And there's a bit of trust that has to be recognized, and that when we're presenting that roadmap or we're presenting the solution, we don't have everything that a client's going to need. We don't expect that we're going to be able to do that. So we do try to hold sort of both of those and two thoughts at the same time, if you will, is how do we make sure that we can focus on what can be done and how it can be done? Because the last thing we want to present to a client is, hey, here's a great plan. Here's what we think you need to go do, with no means for you to get there. we are the implementers. We are the folks that want to be involved and engaged. So that concept of trying to be as agnostic as we possibly can be, we absolutely are. And at the same time, we want to be able to say, and here's how you can go do it. Actually get something done so that you achieve an outcome that you're looking for.
Well, Scott, I appreciate the time today. I think it was an awesome discussion. We could probably talk for another 45 minutes to an hour or longer. But for those in the audience who are listening, if they have anything here that they've resonated with and they want to learn more, please come out, reach out to us. We are available. Reach out to the organization. There's several ways to do that. I'm sure Katie will have some call to action information after this podcast. So please reach out to us, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for joining us at the Edge of Innovation. As Jeff said, we're here to help you. You can reach out to us on our website at insource.solutions. Send us an email to communications@insourcess.com or give us a call at 877-467-6872. We hope you'll join us next time for another stone in the path of the digital transformation journey.